Welcome to the living room where we listen, learn, and live together. I'm your host, Richard Martin, and I'm glad that you are hanging out with us today. Today's going to be a walk down memory lane. I'm feeling a little bit nostalgic, and I could have a conversation with you all by myself, but that wouldn't be as fun as being able to have a conversation with those with whom I've had the privilege to share a number of memories. Back in elementary school, the teachers traditionally bade students to line up in alphabetical order. Over the course of a school year, and in my instance, several school years, you end up standing next to a collection of the same peers, either someone whose first letter of their last name was above you or behind you, and definitely with those with whom you shared the same first letter of your last name. Some become friends in and out of that line. Well, I'm glad to take this walk down memory lane and discuss our current realities with a friend of mine that I met, believe it or not, when I was 7 years old, way back in the second grade in a little small private school in Tampa, Florida. Friends, would you welcome with me to the living room, Mrs. Sarah Milam. What's up, Sarah?
Hey, glad to be here. Excited to talk about our childhood.
Yeah, it's, I'm sure a lot of people, I should say, do talk about their childhood with others who might have no familiarity with their childhood. And so you're left to kind of create your own images of what that was like. But I find it to be particularly fruitful and inspirational and even clarifying when you talk through things with someone who was there for some of it. Now, we have a lot of shared memories. Not every memory is the same. We just weren't always in the same place all the time, but we spent a lot of the time together in the same place. When you
Yes, we did.
Yeah,
Yes, we did.
all of those days, it's crazy, right? We were learning handwriting and cursive and math and English and
Yeah.
science and on together with a host of our other friends. I think one of these days we'll have to do what has been suggested before, getting a big maybe Zoom gathering or some kind of reunion, because it would be great to be in the same place, to share the same space.
Yeah, it'd be super fun.
So how are you doing? Growing up in Florida, what's life like? What's life like for a Florida guy out west?
Yeah, it's very different out here as far as um, mainly weather and landscape. But yeah, I love it. I think I was kind of always meant to be in the mountains. Once I left Florida, I I don't know that I admitted it to myself, but I kind of knew I wasn't going back. I just fell in love with the mountains and just I need to be in nature in the mountains. I don't know. Something speaks to my soul, it refreshes me. So yeah, I love it out here. Still trying to get used to, the snow and things like that, but I'm figuring it out.
It's interesting you mentioned that because I was sharing very recently with someone else that growing up in Florida, it was great. Don't get me wrong. I love Florida.
Mm.
Beaches are accessible. It's a highly tourist environment. Disney World, Adventure Island, Universal Studios, they're very close. But leaving Florida to go to school, I just didn't realize how much we were missing out on because everything was flat.
Mm.
I definitely love
Mm.
the dimension that comes when you've got varying elevations, whether it's mountains, various other kinds of topography. So I feel you wholeheartedly that I'm a Florida kid at heart, and I always will be, but I have just a greater appreciation for different kinds of landscapes. So I'm with you on that.
Yeah, and a change of season. We didn't really, I always say like there's two seasons in Florida, hot and hotter. So I enjoy, fall and spring, and winter's not my favorite, but there is something magical about just a change in season and getting excited about what that brings. So I like that too. So
Same here. I didn't realize how humorous it must have seemed to those who weren't native Floridians when winter would come and the meteorologist would say, we're going to have a cold one. It's going to be in the low 50s. And, we would flip out, pulling out our coats, covering
right.
outside. Man, now low 50s is a welcomed day outside. Let's have some fun.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So, Tampa Adventist Academy. I started in second
Yes.
grade, but you started that's where you started school, right?
Yeah, that's what I started. Yeah, kindergarten.
I remember coming into our second grade classroom, and there are a few people, don't ask me how I remember this. This is a long time ago, but there are a few people that I remember kind of meeting on that first day. I remember meeting you. I remember meeting Leah, Alex, Jennifer, and Chris. For whatever reason, that setup I don't know if that's just where everybody was situated in the room when I walked in. And of course, in second
Hmm.
grade, you just have no idea what all lays ahead of you. But I remember Chris, Leah, Jennifer, Alex, Sarah. And then I'm sure in the course of the first few weeks, of course, everyone else now comes into the picture in my memory. Casey and Amanda and Lionel and Ashley. We can go on. And then, certain other pieces of life become clear. When's your birthday? Oh, my birthday's here. You're older than me. You're younger than me. Then you find out, oh, where do you live? Oh, I live close to there too. And on and on and on. And if I could go back and just tap that second grade year old me on the shoulder and just say, man, you're in for a great ride and a long ride. You're gonna grow up with these
Yeah.
people. You guys are gonna literally see yourselves transition in life in every way. You guys are gonna encounter the same new seasons, the same questions. You guys are pretty much gonna share at the same time. And when I look back on it, I'm very grateful that my parents made the investment to place me in that school. What about you?
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, I was there from kindergarten to 10th grade. And I mean, yeah, you're bonded with those people, in a way that, I mean, the memories that you've made when you're all kind of in the same, I mean, we had the same core group of people for most of our way through school. So I don't know, it's the memories that we've shared. I think back on that place a lot. Yeah, I loved my experience there. Still have friends, still try to connect with Casey, and Chris whenever I'm home. And I'm really glad that my parents decided to, like you said, kind of mentioned, make the sacrifice to send me and my sister and my brother there. Took a lot of hard work and dedication to do that, but I can see, that I am who I am now because of that sacrifice. So I can't say enough about. I love that school.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
a highlight of mine happened maybe 5 years ago now. It wasn't long after I got married that, I would often recite stories to her, to my wife, that is. And I've been able to visit her childhood school where she attended from kindergarten through 12th grade. So she went to one school for
Mm-hmm.
all of her secondary education. And I said, well, I kind of did for most of my secondary education,
Mm-hmm.
second to 10th grade. Um, and so I was able to take her to TAA to kind of put a visual to a lot of my stories. I said, this field right here is a field of, blood, sweat, and tears. This is where we
Yeah.
ran 5 laps. This is where we played softball, football, soccer, kickball, capture the flag. This is where we climbed monkey bars, seesawed. I mean, and inevitably, when you're walking there, you're just looking around in every place. And even though she's singing, it's just hard to really bring back to life. Like, no, you don't understand. This is the parking lot where we would leave to go on road trips as before we were double digits. Like when I think back about that kind of stuff, I say to myself, I don't know if I become a parent one day, I don't know if I'd be so eager to just let my 7-year-old travel like we did. Um, and I think a part of our experience is that we had not only the investment of our own parents, but we got a chance to see a literally a community of parents to be on board with shaping young people. Parents had to take off work to take us on trips. They had to buy school uniforms, basketball uniforms, gymnastics uniforms. So it's kind of, I really think there should be some kind of documentary on that school, that place, just tracing where people are now who had a chance to go to Tampa Junior Academy before it was TAA, then when it became TAA. And it's interesting now, they're in a different location in Tampa, still doing well, but that campus is actually a church, believe it or not. It's a church now, and I don't know, I get a little
Oh,
emotional.
really? Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. The school proper has moved. It's called North Tampa Christian Academy. the actual campus where we went and what we're thinking about in our minds. It's a church now, and but the grounds still look the same, so the memories are
Same.
still there. Let me see if I can think of all of our teachers. So who were your kindergarten and first grade teachers? Because I came in second grade. Who were your kindergarten and first grade teachers?
Yeah. So my kindergarten teacher was Miss Goosey,
Mm-hmm.
Leah's aunt. Um, First grade, I feel like first and second grade, was that Miss Thomas? Did you have Miss Thomas?
I didn't. Miss Thomas was first grade because she taught my sister first grade as well, believe it or
First
not.
grade. Okay.
Second
Okay.
grade was Miss Levitt.
Okay.
Yeah. Second
She
grade
did
was
second.
Levitt.
Okay.
And a portion of third, but then she left midway through third grade. And then we had
Right.
Mrs. Hammond. Do you remember her? Angela Hammond?
Oh my goodness. Barely. For some reason yeah, I definitely remember Miss Levitt,
Yeah.
but
I actually
I
had the
don't
chance to
remember Miss
reconnect.
Hammond very well.
I reconnected with Mrs. Levitt on Facebook a couple years ago, and I had lost connection with her since she left in second grade. So it was when I was in either I was in college or grad school, believe it or not. And I said, Mrs. Levitt, I don't know if you remember me. I was your second and third grade teacher. And she remembered all of us. She had like a picture or something with all of us out in the field. So Angela Hammond, I can understand how we can have faint memories of her. She came in halfway through third. She taught us fourth. And then, of course, I know you know who fifth and sixth grade teacher was.
Oh, Miss Blevins.
Miss Blevins.
Love Miss Blevins.
Miss Blevins.
Yeah. Yeah. She was a great teacher.
She really was. I mean, she knew how to get us in line too, real quick.
Oh, yeah, she did. But that was something that I definitely appreciated about her. You need to have somebody who can who can control the classroom.
Mhm.
So I definitely felt like she could do that, but she was a great teacher.
Right. And
We have Mr. Smith for homeroom in seventh grade.
that's right. We sure did.
And then we had Mr. Matthews after that,
Yeah.
right?
Mr. Matthews for eighth grade. And then ninth and 10th was kind of, you just shifted per subject.
Right. I don't remember having a specific homeroom, but yeah, I definitely remember, Miss Edmister, who I still sometimes see at church when I go home, and Miss Easy,
Yep.
Mr. Matthews.
I remember
Who
Mr.
else did we
Chiquay
have?
taught us religion. I think eighth grade religion was Mr.
Oh,
Chiquay.
yeah.
Listen, I didn't know I was going to be a pastor, and I could not stand the long papers, all the reading we'd have to do. But looking back, I actually went to school with Andrews with of course we went to school with his children in at TAA, but I ended up meeting up and reconnecting with Joy, one of his daughters, at Andrews. So she went to Andrews there, but I told her, I said, tell your father I'm a pastor now, and thank you for the way you taught religion.
Yeah.
It really made a difference.
Yeah. I remember I enjoyed his class, but I remember the only time I ever fell asleep in class, I fell asleep in his class because of coming back from a canoe trip.
Mm-hmm.
I remember we had gotten back super, super late and had to be back at school the next morning. And I think that was the only time I've ever fallen asleep in class.
But I never did the canoe trip. I remember Miss Abernathy organizing.
Miss Abernathy.
And I was just,
yeah.
That wasn't my cup of tea. Looking back, I probably should have gone. I remember you all came back. You were like, yo, it's great. It was a good time. But I guess then I just wasn't in the headspace to do it.
It was a really good experience. But it was a little, there's definitely some rough parts about being in a canoe for 4 days straight.
Right.
After I got back from that trip, the first time, I think I said, I'm never getting in a canoe again. And then I did the exact same thing next year.
Sure.
And I've been in a canoe many times since then. But yeah, those are pretty epic trips. That's for sure.
People have a hard time believing me when I say that I was a part of a gymnastics team. They always kind of say, no way.
Yeah.
I played pretty much every sport. We were exposed to every sport. And I want to take this time just to shout out Mr. Phil Hudema. Oh, Coach, man, there's so much love and appreciation for that brother. We had a chance to reconnect 2 years ago. In fact, at the same education conference in Chicago, Coach was there. I ran into Chris there, and both were surprises. I saw Chris from a distance and we both said, no way. I mean, we gave each other this hug. My wife was like, who's this guy? I said, babe, you have no clue. This is my guy. We literally grew up together. I saw Coach from a distance. Coach was on the phone. He said, listen, I got to call you back. He gave me the biggest bear hug. You know, Coach hitting you. What are you doing? Where are you? What's going on? And so I just took that moment. It was a brief moment, but I said, Coach, man, I just want to let you know how much I appreciate you. So for those listening, and if you had maybe a private school experience yourself, then maybe you can relate to this. And if there are those who listen who went to TAA, then you know by your own experience. Our coach, he made it a point to make sure we knew the basics of every sport: hockey, volleyball, basketball, softball, football, soccer. And he was not partial. Tall, short, wide, thin, male, female, everyone was going to learn the fundamentals. And looking back, I mean, if you're already into sports, you're just down for everything. But I can imagine for those even now who have never touched a ball, a puck, a net, been in a gym again, there was something about the foundation of that I really appreciated. But Tampa Adventist Academy, by and large, for several years was known for gymnastics. The gymnaires. Even thinking about it. Woo,
yeah.
So before we talk about the gymnaires, let me preface it a little more that there were kind of three teams, and either you spent all of your time in one or you spent the beginning youthful years in two of them, and then you graduate if coach so chose or you wanted to, but definitely mostly if he chose you to the gymnaires. So there was tumble tots, tumbleweeds, and gymnaires. When I arrived in second grade, I knew about the gymnaires because I had friends from my church who had already gone to school and were in the gymnaires, but I was in the tumbleweeds first for second grade, and that was fun. It was a whole bunch of fun. I remember, man, what were their names? They were upperclassmen. Their names escape me right now, but they were in 10th and 9th grade, and they were coaches' aides at the time. And then third grade, I was so blessed to be selected for the gymnaires. Did we go there at the same time, or were you in gymnaires from second grade?
I was in tumbleweeds for a year because I have a shirt that I think my mom made me a quilt with like a bunch of t-shirts from gymnaires and anyways, shirts from TAA and academy and college and stuff. But I think I was in tumbleweeds for a year, but I do remember being in gymnaires in second grade. But
Right.
I'm not sure if that was like partway through the year or I'm sure it was at the beginning of the year. But I think I did join in second grade. I was in gymnaires, which, my goodness, I was so tiny. That is crazy. They just want to shove you at the top of the pyramid.
I was just going to go there. I said, yes, Sarah, you had no other choice. You were going to be tossed. You were going to be at the top of three highs.
Yeah.
You know, that just came with whatever our physical real estate came with. That was pretty much where we were going to go. You were going to be a base. You were going to be a person. And if you were tiny enough, you're going up there. And yeah. And it's so, I mean, when I see children now, like I pastor my kids and I'm saying to myself, this person's in second grade, this person's in third grade, and we would have been a part of a team. And again, everybody played a part. Now, not just in terms of gymnastics, not just in terms of the moves. When it came time for conditioning and preparing, coach didn't care if you were in second grade or 10th grade. You needed to get down and push up position like everybody else. You had to do jumping jacks like everybody else. And I think that was one of the unique things about that team environment was it really, truly, I think, embodied certain core principles of team that in a shared space, if you were in 9th or 10th grade, you were expected to kind of look after those who were younger, not to take advantage of them or, overlook them. And of course, we were kids, so we didn't always get that right. But at least the value was there. If you were in second grade, first grade, I feel like there were a few first graders who they were just ahead of their time. I think maybe like Angie and Carlos got it in first grade because they just knew how to flip and stuff, which was awesome. Or 10th grade, we all had to sign. I don't know if you remember this. We had to sign contracts, drug-free contracts. Imagine third graders signing drug-free contracts.
Right? Yeah. I'm like, do they even know what drugs are? Yeah.
I
No,
didn't.
no, I didn't either. But I forgot that we had to do that. That's interesting.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
could.
That was a huge part of like our team's message, was like, was drug free, which I don't think I really like understood that at the time, just because I'm like, I don't even think I really understood what that meant.
Yeah.
Besides, I knew that they were bad.
You know
But
what?
yeah, I mean, looking back on that, yeah.
It just hit me. You were in gymnastics in second grade because I just had a whole bunch of yearbook pictures flashback in my mind of the white and blue uniforms. So that was before
Yeah.
we went on the that was before we went on the long patriotic uniform variations. You and Jennifer and Alex and David, you all had the blue and white ones. And I remember one of the drug-free demonstrations was Coach would give his kind of monologue, and certain teammates would line
Mm.
up and then like as fall down. You remember that? Hey,
Oh
it
yeah.
worked. It
Yeah,
was
I
brilliant.
remember that. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, those uniforms were terrible. The ones that I wore in second grade, they were like super itchy and yeah, they were really hot. But yeah, then once we got the next uniform, we wore that, like you said, variations of that pretty
Yeah.
much until the end.
Pretty much to the end, whether it
uh
was the full
yeah.
fledged Star Spangled Banner shirt or the blue on blue with the different patches. So, what do you remember
The love in
about?
any language.
Oh, straight from the heart.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
Goodness.
yeah. So, what do you remember about Coach and his emphasis on our uniforms?
Oh goodness. I mean, something that I really loved about Coach, he's very like strict, right? I mean, you were terrified to forget any part of your uniform. And like they weren't just like, we had like skirts plus shirt, but we had like the little like stretch shorts that we had to wear underneath them. We had like our slippers, we had our socks. We had
Hmm.
the girls had like, I think the guys had belts. That
Yep,
was
we
like a
sure
very
did.
important thing. And then the girls had like little scrunchies or hair ties that we had to wear. I mean, it was like a whole thing making sure you had every single piece of your uniform. And like he knew if you like were wearing the wrong socks. It was we're like, oh my goodness. So I remember, that was like something very important. And I feel like that really taught me, like responsibility, like
Hmm.
take responsibility for your own stuff, make sure that you have it. My parents were very like, you need to make sure that you have all your stuff together. Um, so I feel like coach was like kind of instilled that responsibility, I think, in, everybody on the team, like at a very young age, people in second and third grade remembering to like wash their uniforms and have all their stuff with them. I mean, that's a pretty, I feel like that's a pretty decent responsibility for a second grader. But then I also feel like he was so like, there was something about him, like you were afraid of him, like terrified that you were going to get in trouble for doing something, but at the same time, like just had like so much love and respect for him. Like I don't know, I feel like that is something that takes a lot of years to really hone those skills, to be somebody, like be somebody's friend and be somebody who's also in charge.
Yeah, I
um
would agree.
yeah, but the yeah, I don't know how exactly he honed those skills, but um I definitely, I miss him and admire him for all the things that he taught me on that team. I mean, yeah, you learn so many things just as a kid, as younger, you're trying to learn, responsibility, I think, and like, I mean, to memorize all those routines where you needed to be, I mean, that's a lot. And then I think as you get older, you're learning new skills. As you get bigger, you're not just on top of the pyramid anymore. Like by the time you're in eighth grade or whatever, now you're at the bottom of the pyramid. So I feel like you learned a lot about physically how to be part of a team as you like grow and mature. So yeah, it was a very unique experience for sure. Out here on the West Coast, gymnastics is not really, like the academies don't have gymnastics and stuff out here. Um, so yeah, I kind of miss that. I mean, I'd love for my kids, to have that experience.
Sure.
Maybe I'll have to have me and Eric do a gymnastics team at our local,
Do it.
our local Adventist school.
Do it.
I don't know how good I would be at that, But yeah, it was a really unique experience, and I'm really grateful for, I mean, acro fests and so many road trips and the Keys. I loved going to the Keys and doing, being a part of that camp meeting. I mean, that week was just fun. So
Yeah.
much fun. Lots of sunburn, but really fun. Yeah, it was really, really, really unique experience. Yeah.
It was. And again, that's kind of the I guess, intersection of a lot of my feelings at this stage in life, that while it was happening, while it's unfolding, you're at the level where you are. You have no way of comparing the future with the present, but you do compare the present with the past. And so as I look back, I say, man, it was a solid chunk of life in which at the beginning, second, third grade, you're very young. There's so much you don't know. But like you said, by the end, I love how you put it, you grow into different responsibilities. I remember the first time coach said, okay, Rich, you're going to be a base. Prior to that, I was like, a base? That's for the big guys. And it was like, you're the big guy now.
Right.
I remember, basing a butterfly in 3 highs. I remember learning to tumble. That was probably a highlight of my life. This is going to sound really cheesy, but if coach hears this, man, I love it. Changed my life. So I always had a huge affinity for tumbling. Darla, Brian Mayo, Will, Winston, Taj, and I can go on and on about people who just really tumbled. Cassie. Yeah, wow. So many people. Carlos, that dude can do everything. I remember David could just strength out of the world. Like he was doing presses out of the womb and catching footballs with one hand.
Yeah.
So you see all kinds of athleticism all around you, but tumbling really held a special place in my heart, probably because I just love the grace of it. And so I actually went and learned to tumble at a different gymnastics / cheerleading gym. You might remember it wasn't far from where we lived, over off Bears, I think. Whatever the exit was after Fletcher, there was a gym there. And I went in, I think it was 7th or 8th grade. I learned to tumble, came back to TAA, showed coach, and he kind of put me in the tumbling routine. And there's this one Florida State Fair memory where I was coming down. You remember that the springboard mat that we had to put up?
Oh, I remember springboard. Yeah, yeah. Glue all the blocks, like
the little blocks, the rollout mat and the cushions. So coming down the springboard mat, and this was one of coach's. I'd heard it my entire gymnastics career, just observing others tumble. But I'm coming down to do, I think it was a round off back handspring or back tuck. And in the course of doing my round off, I heard him say, "Ride it up, Rich." And he would always tell people that, like, ride it up, reach as high as you can, bend to your tuck. And I performed the move and landed. And I was like, yo, I got to do a tumble pass. And so that was pretty cool. Now, do you remember this? I honestly didn't think of this until a few seconds ago when you were talking about a lot of what we learned. Do you remember the doubles routines where it was?
Oh, yeah. Oh, definitely. I remember. I remember the doubles routine. I actually broke my wrist in the middle of a doubles routine.
Are you serious?
Yeah. I can't remember. Now I can't remember the guy. I think it was Joel. That was my partner. And we were doing like the flag stand.
Right.
And I mean, I fell and I was like, 2-3 feet off the ground and broke my wrist and finished the rest of the routine. But of course, like I was trying to do a couple other moves and like I couldn't put like weight through my arm. And I remember coach being like, Sarah, what's going on? Because they were super easy and I couldn't do them because I broke my wrist.
Broke your arm.
But yeah, it was at the state fair. So anyways, I do remember the doubles routine. Were we partners?
Yeah, I wasn't going to say that after you said you broke your arm, but now that it wasn't me, I'll say that. Yeah, we were partners. You're right. I remember that because I do remember, I think after the routine, like, first of all, we developed a pretty significant toughness, if I can use that word, as a result of being on the team. So I do remember us kind of having to suck it up and get through some moments. And I do remember now you kind of off on the side, maybe Casey and others kind of surrounding you. But, if you broke your arm, you're going to get teary-eyed, but you weren't like boo-hooing. It was like, can I get this fixed to keep going? So I forgot about that, but I'm glad it was Joelle, but I'm glad it wasn't me because I have memories of our doubles routine. Particularly, I remember us off on the side in practice for a number of weeks trying to learn that finishing move. It was I don't even remember what it was called, the press, and then you got to roll and hook elbows.
Yeah. 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 I do remember that. That took a lot of trust, that finishing move. Cause like, if you didn't, you know what I mean? Like, if your base didn't catch you, like your face was just gonna, pretty much
That'd be
hit
a
the mat.
problem.
And I don't know, I don't know if we were, yeah, I don't know if we were partners like after I broke my wrist or what, but I
I
mean,
remember
I
that.
probably had some trust issues with that
Yeah. I remember a
with
couple
whoever
of
my
the
partner was after that.
Yeah. And I mean, in elementary school, gosh, looking back, I wish I had, to some degree, I wish I had like the maturity of now to process all of the
Oh yeah.
lessons going on. Like you mentioned the word trust. I didn't think of that word then. I just thought of like coach told us to do these moves, we got to do them. But having grown up together, we knew one another. So I can remember a few of the moves, like the walk up handstand where you put out your knee and you step up on one into the handstand.
Oh
And
yeah.
I remember man, I don't know. Coach probably remembers all of that, but I do remember the doubles routine. And I remember we were all the bases were in line. And
Yep.
I actually think there was one where the tops run and, we jump and then we have to do the hold up in the air and turn around. I wish we had video footage of that stuff, man. Those days were good days. And looking back, all I can think of is like, wow, thank you, coach, for his interest in gymnastics. And when you think of all those routines, some were fun, roundup routine, very quirky.
Roundup. Yeah.
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 Others were very complex. I remember dead bug was a huge move we had to do that had a lot of parts to it. And then, we got to talk about this before we transition. We did a lot of shows. We traveled, whether it was Forest Lake for clinics, Southern Nebraska. I remember not long after 9/11, we came up to DC and Washington Adventist University, UC. The Florida Keys, that was the annual highlight. Mexico, the mission trip to Mexico, that was awesome. But
Yeah.
annually, I think the moment we always looked forward to, because there was so much that went into it. I mean, you're talking about probably a month and a half out, you're prepping, and that's home show.
Yeah. Yeah. Whew, that was a lot of prep. I don't know how many classes we got out of to
Yep.
to spend extra time working on that for like forever. Yeah.
I can
I
see
loved
Coach
home shows.
now building the scaffolding to put up, banners at the top of the gym above the stage, setting up the platforms that people would stand on. And it was a huge culmination to the sports year or the gymnastics season. By that time, we had pretty much learned our routines cold. And inevitably, man, the slideshow with the music at the end, tear jerker.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And it was so cool to see, like, I mean, just that gym was packed full of people, full of all people, alumni who, came back, like, because they were a part of TAA, even if you were never part of the gymnastics teams or was never coached by, Hudima, but, man, that gym was packed full of people who just
Well,
loved the school and loved to see what we were doing. It was a really cool experience.
it was.
Yeah.
It was
I
phenomenal
loved
energy.
home shows. Home shows were kind of intense.
They were.
Yeah, but they were really cool.
They really were. There was no energy, no other place where we performed, whether it was Martin Luther King parade, in my mind, had the kind of like tangible atmospheric energy as home show. When you walked out in front of all those people, it was almost like you could breathe it in. And looking back, having left the school and gone back to visit a time or two, I've gone inside the gym and I'm like, this gym was bigger in my mind, but people packed in. And I think that made it all the better. So again, thank you, coach. Thank you to all of the parents, the teachers, the sponsors, the drivers. Oh, I don't know how I'm forgetting this. Yo, early on, I feel like every road trip, I somehow was riding with you guys.
Yeah, I feel like that was true. I remember like my parents, like jamming out to Leanne Rhymes
That's
with
right.
you and one of my parents' many minivans.
The van. I remember
of the 90s. Yeah, I don't know where we were going. Was that to the Keys or to Miami, or I don't remember where we were going, but we had that CD on repeat.
Repeat. And Leanne Rhymes was young. I didn't know she was young, but she was like a teenager. Where would I be without you?
Yeah.
Believe it or not, I remember you coming to school every now and then after a weekend where your father had done a marathon. And you knew, I didn't know what a marathon was. And you were like, yeah, my dad, he runs marathons. What's that? It's a long race. And then I guess during the training season, you'd say, yeah, my dad ran like 10 miles this morning. And, my only reference point for miles was miles being driven. So when you would say, yeah, he ran like 10 miles, 13 miles before school, I remember a number of us to be like, Sarah, like that is not true. There's no way a person ran 10 miles. Well, here we are so many years later, and I've had the chance to do a few marathons myself, and I know those training runs now. After I finished my first marathon, no lie, Ron Milliner came to mind, and I hit him up on Facebook as a part of this like long dissertation of gratitude to everybody who possibly had anything to do with me running marathons. Because running with Coach, 1 mile was long. Remember, we had to run that mile for, I think it was soccer season. And so I never had any aspirations for long distance. But what do you remember about those memories as a family with, going to marathons with your dad? And the second part of my question is, will you ever run a marathon?
Oh, I knew that second part was coming. I think it was kind of inspiring, to, my dad was super diligent and very like dedicated about, he ran every morning. I think he took Saturdays off, because he always did a really long run on Sunday. He had a running group, that he ran with on Sundays. And that was always like a longer run, like the 13-mile kind of longer run. I don't even remember how much he used to run like on a morning, probably 5 to 7 miles. But, I don't think I really, understood how much dedication that took, but now thinking about waking up I remember we left at 7 like a.m. to get to TAA by 8. So, he was up, I don't know, 5:35, up running every morning, rain or shine. Now that I think about that, I'm like, man, that's a lot of hard work and dedication. But yeah, it was fun traveling for marathons. It was kind of fun my dad did quite a few Disney marathons, which I absolutely loved. Because I think once we stayed actually in Disney, but when we didn't, we would like get breakfast and like go sit on the curb somewhere in the Magic Kingdom and watch dad run by, and we'd have like signs, that would be like, run, Ron. And he would like, I don't know, sometimes throw things at us. Like if he wanted us to take, if he had like a shirt on that he wanted us to take or something. And then we're like, cool, now we have this like sweaty shirt that we're carrying around. But yeah, it's really cool. It was a really cool experience. And like still to this day, I kind of brag about my dad and say like, oh yeah, well, my dad ran marathons. I could probably get into running. My sister, Emily, actually ran a half marathon a couple years ago, which surprised us all because she kind of hates running, essentially. But she and her roommates, when she was at Loma Linda, they were really, into it and made sure that they kept each other accountable. At this point, I don't do a whole lot of running. I probably run once a week, about 3 miles or so. I like to mix it up. I like to, do all kinds of stuff. So, but I could get into it. I'm just, I don't know if I'll ever do one though. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I'll leave that to my dad's like legacy. Maybe I'll see if Andrew or something wants to carry that on.
Sure. Well, but, yeah. No need to convince me because I kind of got duped into running a marathon the first time and got hooked. But prior to that, I had no intention myself. But I'll just say, if the opportunity ever comes and you feel inspired to do it, I feel like that's the best time. Don't let anybody force you because it does take a lot. But I think you also gain a lot too for whatever you invest. When you cross that finish line, there is kind of like, oh my goodness, this is a pretty monumental achievement. So we reconnected in 2012, thereabout, at Andrews. We were both in grad school. We kind of parted ways, all of us, that class, most of us after 10th grade. And then
Mm-hmm.
you went to the mountains of North Carolina, to Mount Pisgah. I went to the mountains of Pennsylvania, to Pine
Yes.
Forge. After that, we went to Oakwood. You went to Southern, and then we reconnected at Andrews. What was what was that transition like, going from TAA, a place where you had been since kindergarten? You know the way to school, and when I say you know the way to school, for the listeners, I mean more than just the actual roads that you take. That way is literally steeped into our routine. You just have to think now, from kindergarten, from second grade, it's the same right turn, the same left turn, the same parking lot, the same faces. So when you come to that ending moment, I mean, emotionally, it's a little bit like, what? Are we really here? We're leaving? And I remember singing Somebody's Praying, I think the last time before leaving 10th grade, and everybody was just a mess.
Yeah.
Because
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
we weren't kids anymore. I mean, we were still kids in the sense of youthfulness, but we weren't children. We had been through high school
Right.
Bible retreats. We had been through, the whole
Mm.
school experience, and up until that point at high school, all of it, the relationships, you name it, we had been through it, and we still, thankfully, were leaving with friendships intact. And so, what was it like going to Mount Pisgah, transitioning? What was the entire boarding school experience like for you at MPA? And, were there similarities and differences between TAA and MPA for you?
Yeah. Um, you know, it was definitely scary. Leaving a place that I had grown up in, and like you kind of said, like, what to expect even out of the school year. There's trash night, right? And then there's like, exactly like what to expect out of like every year.
Mm-hmm.
But um going somewhere new was scary. It was daunting. I didn't know anybody when I went there, which was totally a weird, I only had that experience in kindergarten, which I don't even really remember. That was the first time I was a new student anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden I'm like, and going to be a junior, and I'm like going into this class, and I'm like, I don't know any of these people because, well, I mean, I grew up in the Florida Conference, if I had, anyway, so I didn't know anybody. It was probably one of the best decisions of my life to go there. I ended up really, clicking with a group of people who were also new as juniors. They weren't new to the Carolina Conference, but they were new to the school. And yeah, the people that I became friends with are still some of my closest friends today. Um, but it was definitely, I think it was good for me to get out of my comfort zone. Um, I had the opportunity to like reinvent myself, which I didn't really do. But I mean, it was kind of refreshing to go to a place where maybe not everybody knew exactly who I was. I could, I don't know. Like I said, I didn't really reinvent myself, but it was just I could expose things how I wanted to, or like they didn't know every embarrassing story about my childhood, or or whatever. So I really loved my experience there. I loved Boarding Academy. I feel like it kind of stepped me up as far as responsibility, um, just living away from home. And I think it helped me appreciate my family and my home life a little bit more. Like every time I came home, I've just loved coming home, to my home cooked, meals, and like spending time with my sister and my brother because they were younger than me. And so I enjoyed it. I also really felt like when I went to boarding school, I feel like the campus was really honed in on like spirituality for high schoolers.
Yeah.
And I feel like my spiritual life really took a turn um, when I was there. I don't really, it might have just been, timing, you
Cool.
know, I was a little bit more mature, and I think it was the group of friends that I found were really kind of inspiring. I loved where I went to school. I think I would have been happy to go to, looking back, people are like, why did you go to North Carolina? And something really spoke to me about that place. Plus my grandparents lived like 45 minutes from there. But that was, I think any boarding academy, you're going to have that experience. I mean, yeah, living in the dorm was an experience, and learning to live with lots of people, not
Right.
just my sister who I, shared a room with for like my entire life, but you had roommates that you didn't know. You had to share a bathroom with all these girls that you didn't know. So I feel like I grew a lot there. I feel like it was a really good prep for college too, getting used to that kind of dorm life and having a little bit more responsibility. Yeah, it was a really cool experience.
Yeah,
I love that place too.
I would say the same for myself. So growing up, we knew that TAA was a feeder school, quote unquote, for Forest Lake Academy. Uh,
Mm,
we saw
right.
so many students after 10th grade go there. So for not the whole time, but for a portion of the time, really for me, even up until I'd say the beginning of 10th grade, that was pretty much what it was going to be. We were familiar with
Right.
the Forge, but my mother, I'll be honest, she was not having any of it. To send my child to Pennsylvania and Forest Lake is right up the road, like no way.
Right.
But we went and visited the school at I want to say it was our second semester of 10th grade. So we're coming down to the end now and decisions need to be made, applications need to be submitted. And it was just a very compelling, convicting experience. And I would say the same as you, that two of the best years of my life. I'm grateful, at least for me. I'm grateful that I only went for 2 years. I
Mm,
just think the timing was right to come at a point where you have a level of maturity to transition that far away from home into that environment. Like you said, we had a small
yeah.
slice and taste of what that might be like if you were to take all of our gymnastics trips and when Coach Jeter came in ninth
Hmm.
and 10th grade, our basketball trips and add them up, we had tastes of being away from home, but nothing compares to, when they drop you off and leave and you're not going to see them again until holiday break. I remember a moment of just very intense. It was an evening of homesickness and I'm crying, calling my parents, and they're just like,
Hmm.
all right, Rich, this is very natural. You've been here. This is the first time you've ever experienced this, but you're going to be okay. And, after drying my eyes, it was exactly how they said it. And it was an amazing time. I feel you wholeheartedly on both the intimidation of being new for the first time since second grade, since kindergarten, but the opportunity because you take hold of this reality very quickly that, wait a minute, no one knows me. And not that you have anything to hide,
Hmm.
but you're just presented with a blank slate and you get a chance to. I remember
Right.
cutting my hair. I had the afro from like second to 10th grade. And I went to the
Yep.
barber shop and I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell them. I just said, it's time to come all down. And my barber, who had been cutting my hair that entire time, said, "What?" I said, "Yeah, man, I'm going to a new school. It's just time to turn a page." And, you don't cease to be who you were. But I do remember praying this prayer because you mentioned connecting with a group of friends. I remember praying this prayer because I was really kind of in my feelings, for lack of a better phrase, leaving those that I knew very well and who knew you and, um, you, Allie, Sabrina, we can go on and on. And then my guy friends,
Mm,
Chris, Lionel, Alan, Deloyd, and I prayed a prayer and I can't even take credit for it, but I just remember praying, give me, I want friends that I can, really grow with. I just don't want kind of surface, superficial friends
mm, hmm.
because I had pretty deep friendships coming from TAA and missing everybody in that transition summer. I would hope to reconnect or connect with persons. And that happened for me. And I'm very grateful that, the Lord provided new friends that kind of helped me not miss a beat so far as the development that takes place in community with others. Um, so I would agree with you that the boarding academy experience was just, I wouldn't trade it for the world, just as much as I wouldn't trade TAA and all of the years and memories
Hmm.
that came with it. Boarding school was excellent. So let me ask you this, because now And I mean, I guess we could touch on the collegiate experience, but I think suffice it to say that was great too, right? Glad we
Oh
went.
yeah, yeah, yep.
Southern was good. Oakwood was good. Ultimately, you achieve your you earn your doctorate in physical therapy from Andrews. What was it that inspired you to pursue the path toward PT?
Yeah, so this goes back to Miss Blevins' classroom. Actually, there was a project that she had where she gave each of us like a letter of the alphabet, and we had to research, do a little project on like a career of our choosing. So I got the letter P,
Mm-hmm.
and both my parents are in the health field and they both worked at a nursing home at the time, they said, oh, you should shadow this physical therapist. I mean, what, were you in like fifth or sixth grade? So shadowed the physical therapist there at the nursing home, did my project, and I kind of at that point was like, this is what I want to do, which, I mean, it's kind of surprising because do you really understand what they're doing? How much
Right.
work it's going to take to get through school. Um, But then when I was a little bit older, at least old enough to kind of volunteer at the nursing home, probably like 13, 14, me and my sister would volunteer in the rehab department at the nursing home and still really enjoyed that. A couple of years later, I was able to, actually work there in the summer and still really enjoyed that. So I only kind of saw that side of physical therapy with those experiences, but I've always enjoyed like my core science classes. And then I also always kind of enjoyed sports. Like I think my dream was to be like the PT for like the Tampa Bay Lightning or something like that, or like a football team or something. Now that I'm a physical therapist, I'm like, I don't know if I really want to do that, but but so it all really kind of started with that project, which I didn't even know that was a career. And then once I kind of latched hold of that, I knew I wanted to do something kind of in that career field. It kind of bounced a little bit, kind of back and forth, like, oh, maybe I'll do occupational therapy or speech therapy, or maybe I'll be a dietitian or something. Um, but ultimately I just kind of kept coming back to that. And, I don't know. It was I guess, God had planned that for my life because I love it. I love helping people. I love helping people get back to things that they're passionate about, whether that's sports or gardening or hiking or whatever. So, it's a great job. I love it.
So you
Yeah.
and Eric, um, early in marriage, we're married now. Wow, and we're in our
Yeah.
30s. That, that's pretty awesome. You
It's
all
weird.
made a choice to purchase and make home in a tiny home. Um,
Yes.
Over the past, I'd say maybe 10 or 15 years, maybe 10 years, past 10 years, it's grown in terms of, I think, national and global recognition. Why did you all choose that? And what have been the greatest benefits for you all and also challenges in a tiny home?
Yeah. So, my husband, Eric, we met in PT school. So we graduated the same year. When we graduated, we were not really sure what setting we wanted to work in. We could work in outpatient setting, which is kind of where people traditionally rehab from, sports injuries and stuff like that. You could work in a hospital. You could work in kind of a neuro rehab, which, would help people recovering from traumatic brain injuries or spinal cord injuries, that kind of thing. You could work with kids, you could work in a nursing home. So there's so many different avenues. We weren't sure where we really wanted to work. So we decided to do travel therapy. Um, so we signed on with a travel company and they basically find work for you kind of in different states. And it's kind of a temporary thing. You work there for at least 3 months. And then sometimes you can extend your contract a little bit. So we started off, our first job was in Tyler, Texas. We were there for like 6 months. Then we went to kind of near a PUC, which is in California, an Adventist college there. We were there for 3 months. And then we actually came to Hood River, Oregon, which is where we are right now. and did a 6-month contract here. And so just in the travel lifestyle, we wanted to continue to keep traveling, but got really tired of not really having a house, not really having you just kind of pick up your stuff and move, and you're staying in hotels and whatever. So we were like, let's build a tiny house, and then we'll just take our home with us wherever we go. God had different plans for us. Once we moved to Hood River, which is where Eric grew up, here in Oregon, we found really amazing jobs that we just absolutely loved. And it's a small town. And so it's kind of like, we just felt like we couldn't leave. Like, we didn't want to leave, we just love it here. And really kind of dove into the community and the church and the life here. So we decided not to keep traveling, but we did build a tiny house, and it's like 320 square feet.
Okay.
And, we love it. I mean, we really kind of fell in love with that minimalist lifestyle. Just less is more, the less things that you have to tie you down, the more that you can travel, adventure, explore. So it is, I think that's probably one of the best benefits, is just, it kind of limits being focused on stuff, being focused on things, because you just don't have room for it. You just don't have room. I can't have a ginormous shoe collection, which, you know what? It's totally fine. I don't have to have that, and I think you just kind of also get into thinking, in that minimalist lifestyle, there's so many people in the world who live with nothing and they are happy. Like, I don't have to have stuff to be happy. So I think we kind of fell in love with that lifestyle, and people are like, oh, you must have had to downsize. But we, were in college, got married, and went straight into travel. So we actually upsized when, we had to buy things before we moved in here. We didn't have a mattress or a couch or, any furniture at all. So we actually really upgraded when we moved into this place. So yeah, and it's super easy to clean, which I love. It takes me like 20 minutes to clean my whole house. And it's just easy to manage too, as far as like, we need to repaint the house, which we did like this summer. It took us like 3 days. It's just everything's on a smaller scale. So it's a little bit less to manage and spend time managing. Some of the downsides is definitely just, there's not a lot of room for stuff. We have a lot of like hobbies. So we have a loft that we sleep in, and then we have a loft that's our guest loft. But there is just, all of our hobbies are up there. We have like 2 inflatable paddle boards. We have all our 2 snowboards and our snowboarding gear. We have backpacking and camping gear. So we have a lot of, so that loft is kind of just taken up with that. So it does make it a little complicated. I think, we'd love to have a garage or something just to put our toys in, our mountain bikes, which are at Eric's parents' garage, but just that kind of stuff. I think it would be nice to have a space to put all of that stuff. So that's kind of a downside. And then, it's hard to really host, gatherings here. Like if we wanted to have Vespers here, we can have, 2 couples, maybe. It's just not built for that. But we live on my in-laws' property, and they love having people at their house. So we just have our big Vespers groups up there. Or we also, our neighboring property is Eric's grandparents. So we all kind of live on this weird little family compound. And we also host Vespers at their house and potlucks at their house. So for the most part, we love it. Yeah. My husband is like, I never want to live in anything besides a tiny house. And I'm like, I don't know if it's forever, but I'm very happy about it right now. So,
well,
yeah.
Well, I must say, when I learned that you all were moving in that direction, and not just when I learned that, but I've always had kind of a distant admiration for the concept because of what you shared, that
Mm-hmm.
with less space comes, I think, more focused decisions when it comes to what I actually
Mm-hmm.
want in my space. When you have more space, sometimes just by default, you think I have to fill it up, and you could easily fill it up with things you don't need, don't use, don't even remember you have until it's time to move. But in a tiny home and other minimalist choices, you kind of really say, okay, what do I need in this bag? What do I need in this case, in this space? And so I would also imagine, and I wouldn't say this is for everybody, that, I mean, you guys were newlyweds, so there's really nowhere to retreat as
Yeah.
you're learning to kind of live in the same space, as you're learning to communicate. If there's a little bit of tension, I mean, I would share with young couples or those who are considering marriage, like, marriage requires you grow into it, and whatever space you share, if you're trying to learn one another out, um, you just have that space to do it. So we moved into a 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom apartment when we got married. Wasn't a lot of space at all. You're always walking by the other person to get to wherever you have to go. So, on those days where, all right, we had a disagreement, or we're still learning how to share space, you would love the luxury, quote unquote, of all the space in the world. You go to one side of the house, I go to the other side of the house. But I actually think sharing small space can be a perfect environment to really learn to communicate and connect. And so I love the fact that you all didn't strive for more just for, like, an Instagram picture. Look at this big house we have, but you said, no, we want to
Right.
have a place where we can now start planting and laying a foundation of family values, and just who are we going to be? Who will the Milams be? We know who mom and dad Milliner are. We know who mom and dad Milam are. We know who grandmom and dad Milam are, but it's us now. I remember my parents,
Yeah.
it was a sobering thing they said, and I think it was maybe the first time they came to visit us after we were in our new space, and my mom said, so how are the newest Martins? And I said, whoa, like, that's pretty deep. Yeah, we are the newest Martins.
Mm.
It was kind of like a nice affirming message to say, you guys are grown now. So what does family mean to you? And what kind of values are you trying to shape right now, as a family?
Yeah. Um, I mean, I think family has always been important to me and Eric. I mean, we live really. I mean, we're very close with his family because we live with them all the time and lived with them while we were building our house, our tiny house. Um, so I have so much, I have so much respect for family, but I have so much respect for just for my family where I grew up, my parents, and even Eric's parents. I feel like it's rare, and that's really sad nowadays to have a full family, an entire family unit with both your parents. Um, and I think, like both of us have mentioned, like we are who we are because of our families, and we can see how our friends whose parents have split up, or um, maybe had a parent who wasn't involved in the church, or however that works, how that really affected them emotionally. So I think I just family to me is really important, and I'm yeah, I want to make sure that, like, I carry on some of the things that my parents and have taught me, and then some of the things that Eric's parents have taught him. I think some of the things that we're trying to kind of grow in our lifestyle. Um, I think, right now, adventure and exploring is really important to us. I think, um, and I think just that has to do with just the healing of the outdoors, and just spending time in nature and things like that. That's a huge part of what we do. And I think that also involves, like, living a healthy lifestyle is really important to us. Um, I think that comes also with our career field, seeing people who, have kind of let things go, um, don't care about. I mean, for us, a huge part of what we deal with is exercise, right? So that's kind of what we know probably the most about. But just being active, staying healthy, we want to age well and be able to keep up with our kids someday, grandkids someday, that kind of thing. I think also something that's important to us that we've kind of slowly started discovering as a couple is just being involved somehow in our church. When we were at Andrews, actually, me and my sister volunteered at like a primary Sabbath school at PMC. And then when I met Eric, he started coming with us. And then Emily eventually left to go to Loma Linda. So then it was me and Eric volunteering there. And I think, we weren't really a huge part of the Sabbath school. We just helped wrangle the kids and, sing and stuff like that. But I think that experience has really kind of shaped our involvement in our church. At this point, we have a very small church here in Hood River. And when we first started coming, primarily elderly population. And so really stepped in and tried to kind of just help where help was needed. But just I feel like we really have grown a lot as people, but then as a couple and as a church, from just being involved, and both of my parents were always involved in church, and Eric's parents, who are both teachers for the Adventist school system, they were always really involved in church and school. So I have learned a lot from stepping up and taking responsibility in the church. And we teach the youth Sabbath school, which we're not having right now because of COVID, but learned so much from the kids in that Sabbath school class, and learned so much about myself, from their questions. And, when what you believe, because you've developed that through the years, but when kids are asking you, what do you believe and why do you believe this and how did you come to this, you really kind of start solidifying, oh, this is why I believe this, and this experience from when I was at TAA and Gymnastics, or this experience from when I was a new student at Mount Pisgah Academy, or this experience when I, was in PT school and failed this test, like all these things like have made me who I am and have made me turn to God when I needed him. Or so I've learned, I think that's one thing that I know will always be important for us, is some kind of involvement in either the church and school. Right now, we're not super involved in school because we don't have any kids or anything like that. But yeah, so I think those are some of the things that we definitely are passionate about, and I think those have changed over. We've been married for 5 years, so those have kind of changed over the course of the 5 years. Career is a little less. Our careers are important, but they're kind of, initially that was the main thing. And now they're kind of taking a back burner to some other projects that we have just in the church or in the community. So yeah.
I appreciate you sharing, and a lot of what you said resonates on a personal and familial level for me as well. Kyla and I also, our motto as a couple is we want our marriage and our family to glorify God and edify others. That's kind of a part of like our relational mission, that we sense that we're not just married because we think each other look good, although we do. We're not just married because, it's not just surface. Like, we actually think that if we're going to go the distance, and that's our intent, and, grow old and all of that, that we hope to leave an imprint on this world. And those who fall under the sphere of our influence, like you said, whether it's Sabbath school class or a school setting, and this is probably going to take it to another level of just weirdness when we become parents. And now we're really full circle. Like, we're now parenting like our parents did us, and we're involved in their lives and,
Right.
helping them, they'll grow, that we want God to be glorified. And so beginning in our home, we want to treat one another with the courtesy, the love, the patience, all of that which represents, the fruit of the Spirit. And we want others to be impacted as well. I want to take this time before we go to our last question, because we're coming home here, just to thank, I want to say thank you to my parents. And I want to acknowledge the Milliners, Ron and Beth Milliner. Looking back, as you were sharing kind of what you appreciate about your upbringing and then where you are now as the woman of your own home, I look back and again, I've said it before already in our conversation, at whatever stage we were in growing up, we were just there. We didn't have a chance to really process it all. But looking back, you say we had a chance to both experience personally, but then also view kind of in our peers, like different family dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
No judgment either way, just different. But when I think
Mm-hmm.
of our homes, and we live not far from one another, so there were occasions where you all would pick me and Jasmine up, and we'd go to school together. I remember this was always pretty funny how it would just happen. The timing, we would somehow either you would pass my gate, my subdivision right before, and we'd follow you, or we'd turn right before, and then you'd follow us, and we'd be together, learning to drive. I remember that time when we got our permits. But outside of all of those, that we were able to, our parents are still together, and I think that that's nothing to sell short. Our parents aren't perfect. Our siblings aren't perfect. We're not perfect, but we were able to. I'm grateful, and I consider it a huge privilege that we're able to look back on our formative years and see both of our parents' faces and smile. And that home is still a sweet space for us to go back to, that our siblings are doing well. So I want to give you a moment, maybe just however long you need to take, but if you could use this moment as kind of a time capsule of sorts. And, our parents and families will hear this conversation. What do you want to say to Mr. and Mrs. Milliner right now?
Oh man. This takes me back to to like my 8th grade class dedication to my
Right.
parents. I mean, goodness, I'm so just grateful for and I think I mentioned this is probably my 8th grade graduation, but just the dedication that the things that they sacrificed, to put me through Adventist education my entire life. And I think just the things that they worked hard at, just I think making that sacrifice is hard, when finances are tight, to say, is it really worth it? But they always put our spiritual lives, first. And we never wanted for anything. We didn't have everything that we ever wanted, which I'm very grateful for. but always had what we needed, and I'm super thankful for that. And I think just the example that they led with being involved in, super involved in school with us, sitting down with us every night, helping with our homework, making sure we got our projects done, to coming on all of our gymnastics field trips and things like that. And then also just making it a priority for us to be in all the things that we wanted to be in, our crazy schedules with gymnastics and choir and Pathfinders and the youth group at our church. I mean, we're always doing something, but we were their priority. And I think that's the way that it should be, but it's not always that way. And they were such a good example with being involved in the church and stepping up and us helping them do things in church gave me the skills to now do that in my church.
Sure.
And then they're always the people that I call when I'm in, when I need advice, talk to my parents weekly, and just always have, I call different people when I need advice for different things.
Sure.
And my brother's a carpenter now, so I call him and say, hey, Andrew, can you help me with this thing that I broke or whatever, or what kind of stain should I use on my countertops or whatever. But, calling my dad for certain advice, or to talk about how the Cowboys just played, or, calling my mom when I'm made a mistake in a recipe, or I'm sewing some quilt that I can't figure out. They're just always people that I know have always got my back, and they're always willing to put, my concerns or whatever I'm going through above their own. So, I one day hope to be like half of the parents that they were to me. So, yeah, love you, Mom and Dad.
And much love to you, Mom and Dad, as well. And we are who we are in large part because of them. Andrew is
Mm-hmm.
a carpenter. Andrew's very tall as well, which is bananas because
Right?
I remember, believe it or not, I remember him being born. I remember that news. And then I remember him growing up, coming to school and all that.
Yeah.
Just seeing him tower above you and Emily and his parents is pretty bananas. I might have to enlist his services to create something for me. I don't know. I'll have to talk to my wife and see. I want to pull up here by asking you if you could send a text message to yourself 10 years into the future. What does that text message to yourself say?
I think it would say, don't be afraid to fail.
Mm.
I think I at times, when people ask me, hey, can do you mind doing this at church? Or, hey, do you want to take on this new responsibility at work or something? I tend to shy away from some of those things, because I am afraid to fail, which I think everybody is afraid to fail. But I've kind of learned through many experiences at church, where me and my husband, are leading out with certain things. We're like, wow, okay, the idea that we came up with, that kind of failed. But that happens with everybody when you're learning, and I think those are some things that I need to, I'm hoping in 10 years, I will have come around to the idea that it's okay to fail, have some, be more confident in yourself, and don't be afraid to step up, even if that means you have to fail a couple times.
That's a perfect note to end on. I truly believe that we're living in a day and age where we just cannot take time or relationships and opportunities for granted. So I want to thank you for the gift of your friendship, the cherished memories that no one will ever be able to take away from us. We will not grow up again. That is what it was. And I consider it a huge joy that I look back and I see your face. I see so many other faces. And it warms me when I'm by myself driving, just in my own thoughts. But this conversation that we've been able to have has truly been a blessing. And I love that we have these collective memories. I hope that those who know us and hear this, that you all know we love you. We thank you for the ways in which you're part of our stories. And I share that commitment with you, Sarah, that going forward, now we're in the give back space of life where we get a chance to help others and share based on all that we've had. So it might look like you, or who knows, it might be me, or both of us get a chance to start a gymnastics team one day, or maybe we'll get a chance to be a homeroom supervisor. And for me, even now in my pastoral ministry, I seek to draw from the dedication of, the Mr. Smiths of life and the coaches, Jeter and Hudima, all of the other life lessons that we've gleaned. And, people will never know. People who we influence may never meet the people who've influenced us. I miss Mr. Smith, but I hope that whatever
Me too.
streams we caught, that somehow or another, other people will be nourished by. So I love you very much. And I thank you so much for this time together. I'll be praying for you and Eric that God will continue to bless you all and secure you all on the foundation that you all need to become all he wants you to be. Well, friends, thank you for joining us for this episode of The Living Room. I hope that all that you've listened to as me and my friend have gone down memory lane, that you have learned something that would inspire, transform, and benefit your life and the lives of those around you for the better. That's all we have for this episode of The Living Room. Until next time, I'm your host, Richard Martin. Our special guest today has been my friend, Mrs. Sarah Milam. We'll see you next time.